Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and where we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And now, some people have been asking us, why aren't you talking about the Clippers? Why aren't you talking about so many games? The primary reason to that is due to time zone reasons. This is something we'll probably get into a little bit later in the future, but given the time zone that we're in, it was starting to become very unhealthy to be going to bed every morning at 6 a.m. in the morning after covering games. From a health standpoint, it just wasn't making any sense anymore. But it's something that we look to rectify in the future, but that's the basic reason why last season we pretty much did that for the entire season, and it took a toll on the team, and it's very, very stressful. However, I have been following the team from afar, and I said prior to the season starting, I felt that the Clippers were one of the best constructed teams out there in the Western Conference. Why did I say that? Because of the evidence that I had in front of me last season, right? I had a lot of runway, and I was able to see just what this team could do when they were fully healthy, but also what they can do when they were forced to improvise. Going into the playoffs, they had a very tough first round opponent in the Dallas Mavericks, a team that really gave them some trouble. The year prior, in round one, the Dallas Mavericks pushed them to 6 games if it wasn't for the heroics of Kawhi Leonard, who just said, listen, enough is enough. Last season, it was the same thing, right? They faced him in the first round. Luka Doncic looked like a man possessed. And, they just had to gut it out and beat them in 7 games, but it was a very tough series. They get to the second round where a lot of people felt that they were going to lose to the Utah Jazz because they had the number 1 record in the Western Conference, given how the brackets kind of played out. They played them for a very tough 4 games. After the first 2 games, I think a lot of people were very concerned and said, hey, listen, this team is most likely going to get knocked out of the playoffs. Ultimately, they were able to, beat that team and advance to the third round where they, after game 4, when they lost Kawhi Leonard in the second round, and then from that point forward, being able to take the eventual finals, the team that made it to the team that represented the Western Conference and the Phoenix Suns, being able to take them to 6 games to me showed me a lot about the team. And I had full confidence in the group that I was looking at. And I said to myself, well, if Kawhi Leonard was healthy, I feel very confident about their chances to win the Western Conference. So that's kind of my line of thinking going into this season for a lot of the people that have been wondering. But as you can see right now, this season as it started, a lot of the title favorites like the Brooklyn Nets and the Lakers have had some challenges this season, right? For various reasons. The Nets, we know their challenges with not having Kyrie. James Harden hasn't been himself. And then, of course, you have the Lakers, who have been struggling to find some kind of continuity, and they've been trying to win in spite of Russell Westbrook. And I just think that, he's like an anvil on their ankles, holding that team down. But this is just my opinion. So some teams out there have been struggling, and, the Clippers, on the other hand, they have not been fully healthy. Now, the Clippers have gotten off to a slower start than I would have imagined. I envision them getting off to a better start, and it seems to me at this point that Paul George is in desperate need of help. At least if I'm looking at it from a very simplistic standpoint, right? If we're going to ask the question, do the Clippers need Kawhi Leonard? The answer is yes. But I want to delve a little bit into the data here and really kind of elaborate on my thinking and give you guys a full picture of, the reason I'm about to say a lot of the things that I'm saying here and the shocking reason why I believe that the Clippers, desperately need Kawhi Leonard. So let me just expand on some of my thoughts here. I've been looking at some of the games that the Clippers have been in, and they've been in some pretty close games, right? For example, 2 out of their 4 losses have been decided with 6 points or less. This means that they've pretty much been able to hang in there, with some of these teams that they've been playing against, but they just weren't able to pull out some of these wins, right? Now, after looking at the overall numbers of this team, I was able to find some very interesting data that I want to get into here. So here are some of the figures. Last season, the Clippers were scoring 114 points per game in the regular season, right? They were ranked number 10 in scoring. If we're looking at the offense last year, they were ranked number 1 in 3-point shooting percentage. They were making about 14 3-pointers per game. We remember that they broke the record last season for 3-point percentage, not 3-point makes. I think the team that had the most 3-point makes might have been the Utah Jazz. And I remember the Milwaukee Bucks were up there, and the team with the overall field goal percentage, I think it was the Brooklyn Nets, because the Brooklyn Nets were extremely efficient. Now, last season, I complained a lot about their defense. I felt like their defense could have picked it up. They were very inconsistent for especially for the early part of the season. But last season overall, they were holding opponents to 107.8 points per game, right? I thought that number was a little bit too high. I would have liked them to bring that number closer to 104, whatever it is. So last year they were beating opponents with an 8-point margin. That was basically the margin that they were. So they were beating opponents pretty decisively. They weren't struggling to beat teams. This season, however, just keep this in mind, last season they were averaging 114 points per game. This season they're averaging 102.8 points per game. That is almost a 13-point drop-off. Think about this. That is a 13-point drop-off. That is a chunk of their offense that is gone, which means that the Clippers are having some difficulty scoring. This year, remember last year I said they were ranked number 10 in scoring. This year they're ranked number 23 in the NBA in scoring, right? They're currently ranked number 24 in three-point shooting percentage. Think about that for a second. Last year they were a top 10 offense. Last year they were the number 1 three-point shooting team in the NBA. This year now they're in the bottom 20s, like they're number 23, and then now they're ranked number 24 in three-point percentage. And I want you guys to think about this, just to give you guys a contrast. Last year the Lakers were a terrible three-point team. This year the Lakers are shooting much better than the Clippers are from distance this season. And this season they're scoring 102.8 points per game, but they're giving up 104.8 points per game, which basically means teams are beating them by 2 points, right? Now, there are two ways you can look at this information, especially this last information I gave you. To me, it shows that the Clippers have improved on their defense. To be holding opponents last year to 107.8 points per game to now holding them to 104.8, which is what I really like, what I would have liked to see. It means that they have improved defensively, right? And they've gotten better, right? This year they're currently ranked number 9 in defensive rating, and they're ranked number 11 as far as points allowed. So to me, I think if you're looking at those defensive numbers, they've improved. However, the fact of the matter is this: they're missing Kawhi Leonard, right? Scoring 114 points per game, you're missing at least 13 points per game. That is huge, especially in the NBA. They could use that offensive production. There's no two ways to slice it. Defensively, if they're already playing great as a defensive team, if you add Kawhi Leonard to your team, you're going to bolster your defense. No team that Kawhi Leonard has been on gets worse when you add him. I mean, it gets worse on the defensive side of the floor after you put him, insert him into the lineup. I don't see how they get worse after you add him to the team. But it looks as if the reason, this is just what I'm looking at from a distance, I think the reason that they're struggling, especially with their three-point shooting percentage, is that defenses are now able to pack in a little bit more on Paul George and some of their shooters, right? And also I looked at some of Marcus Morris' numbers. He wasn't doing what he was doing the season before. And a lot of that had to do with, remember, Marcus Morris was the second best three-point shooter in the NBA, shooting about 47.5% from the three-point line. A lot of that had to do with spacing, right? He was hitting those corner threes. I think he was shooting them at like over 60%, so it was absurd. But a lot of that has to do with spacing. When you're playing with a Kawhi Leonard, who's also close to a 40% three-point shooter, you space the floor. You can't cheat on defense. Defenses have to stay honest. Most likely you have to play man-to-man or whatever it is. And once you miss a player like that draws so much attention, it kind of messes with the spacing. And I think that's another thing that they're missing, right? Now, to me, I don't think Kawhi Leonard is returning this year. I think he's returning sometime next year, closer to All-Star break, before or after. So the Clippers are going to have to find a way to make the best of what they have right now. But I think they desperately need him, because I expected them to get off to a better start. Now they're going to have some pretty decent opponents coming up, OKC, and I think they're going to play the Cleveland Cavaliers, if I'm not mistaken. So they're going to have some time. There's a lot of runway to get, for them to find their legs. And obviously, as I said, the Lakers are off to a slow start. For me, I just think that they need to be within striking distance of the playoffs or be in the playoffs. And then when Kawhi Leonard comes back, they'll be able to ramp things up. But to me, I just think that, is after going through the numbers and really looking at things, I think they desperately need Kawhi Leonard. So what I want to know from you guys is, what do you think about my analysis? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, it's just Charles here from Dreamerspro, wishing you guys an amazing day and catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.